Welcome to Many Roads Traveled. I'm Tamara, and I guess I'll be your tour guide. This is my episode number 2. So if you missed the first episode, which is the intro and backstory of how I went on this 30,000 mile road trip from Paris to Cape Town back up to Nairobi, then you might want to catch that first. Okay, if not, you ready to go? Let's do it. This is the first day of the trip in Paris. But remember, this is back in January 1993. So we're going back in time. Before the internet, before Google Maps, before mobile phones. Traveling was a whole different kettle of fish back then. Okay, so I left January 17th, 1993 with my friend Casey, and we got a night flight over to Paris. So we got there at about 7 in the morning, and we didn't have a guidebook for Europe. So I thought Casey, since this was his trip that he kind of badgered / invited me along on with him, that he might have, stuff organized about where we're staying or no. So, of course, we ended up walking around for about 4 hours because we were on a tight budget. We're on a long trip. And I think nowadays, I had a little look today, and it's about $180 a day for Paris. Now, I am a budget traveler, so I find you much cheaper ways to do things. And anyway, yeah, 4 hours walking around Paris with our huge backpacks. I think mine weighed about 20 kilos at the time. Until we finally found a relatively cheap place. I think it was probably about, I don't know, $15 or $20 each a night. However, it ended up, it sounded like a herd of elephants lived there too. So not the quietest place. But anyways, we ended up just crashing for a few hours. We were super tired because I never sleep on flights, so no sleep there. So that first day really wasn't a lot done. We did walk around like the arrondissement that we were in, the neighborhood we were in, again on budget. So we just grabbed some baguettes and some beautiful French fromage cheese. And of course, a couple bottles of red wine, and just went back to our hotel room, basically. Not much of a first day there. So first morning, it's a real proper first day. Up bright and early, decided that we were going to head out to Versailles. So that's about 40 to 55 minutes away, from the city center of Paris. Depends if you drive or get the train. So we got the train, which I highly suggest is using the trains and metro. So we get to Versailles, and it's up on this big hill, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's quite big as well. And Louis XIV built it in 1631. The three main things you really want to see there is the Hall of Mirrors, which is probably the most famous, the chapel, and the opera house. So when you go into the Hall of Mirrors, oh my gosh, I never ever seen so much gold. It's just gold everywhere, or gilded gold, or obviously a lot of mirrors. And it was so crazy because being Canadian, I'm half Canadian, half British, but I grew up in Canada. And especially, this first part of the year, the first part of the trip in Europe, we've never seen like old buildings. I imagine Americans are the same. There's just not a lot of old architecture. Canada is beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful countries still, I think, in the world. But we don't have a lot of that kind of history. So everything was basically blowing my mind. So if I say that, I apologize in advance. Okay, so yeah, Versailles, we spent probably about an hour or so there, or maybe, a bit more. Beautiful. As I said, there's lots to see there. It's great. Definitely highly recommend it. So then we got jumped back on the train back into town, and we noticed like these Parisians were jumping the metro gates so they didn't have to pay. So we're like, aha, we're going to try that. Which we did. So from Versailles, we went to, of course, the Eiffel Tower. Now, we only went to the first level, again, due to budget, but I think that's enough, to be honest. I'll have it on my website, a blog post about present day Paris and prices and things like that. So, because there's lots of different prices for the Eiffel Tower, depending if you're walking up, taking the elevator, what level you're going to. But like I said, we just went to the first level, which was fine. And of course, beautiful, bird's eye view of Paris. And then the Arc de Triomphe is very nearby. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone for your Parisian bucket list. So yeah, so we took a couple photos at the Arc de Triomphe as well. And then on our way home, we just did the budget thing again and got some more baguettes and cheese. And of course, about 3 bottles of red wine. Because I was like, wow, we're not really doing too good on the fruit and veg. But then the red wine, you had the grapes. So we're covered. And that was about it. Tried to sleep along with the herd of elephants in our hotel. And that was about it for that day. A lot of walking, though. So day 2, we headed out to the Musée d'Orsay, which is, it's an old train station, which they've turned into a museum. And it was built in 1898. And to this day, it's probably one of my favorite museums ever in the world. It's just the actual building itself is so beautiful, and it's all like the ceiling's all windows. It's very bright. Just how it's set up's really cool. I mean, there was a lot of really famous artists there when we were there, like Van Gogh and Monet and Manet and Degas and Chagall. Also, the time, I'm not sure if it's there now, but the Whistler's Mother painting, which is very famous, was there. I was very new to the art world back then. Still not, I can appreciate beauty, but I still don't know a lot about art. And the Mother's Whistler, I was... And then afterwards, we went to pretty much, I think it's like across the road or very nearby to the Louvre. And like that's probably the more well-known art museum. And that's where the Mona Lisa is. Again, Mona Lisa, we saw it. Of course, you have to. And yes, it's beautiful. I mean, he was an amazing artist. But it's so tiny. Like, it's probably about that big. It's very small. And I imagine nowadays there's probably about 500 tourists. So whether you even get to see it, I don't know. So we didn't stay too long in the Louvre. And then we decided, okay, well, let's hop back on the metro and head to the Champs-Elysees, which is, very infamous boulevard of very expensive shops and cafes and restaurants. So we're doing our little Parisian jump the metro gate. Well, our luck had run out. We got busted by the Parisian train station security people, cops, I don't know. And they were not impressed, to say the least. So they gave us a 250 franc fine. Now, of course, francs don't even exist anymore. It's euros. But that's the equivalent of about $50 at the time, which was a lot of money. I mean, that was almost a whole day's budget for us in Paris. So we were idiots. So don't do that, especially now they have security cameras everywhere. But like I said, you could get day passes or 3-day passes, metro passes. So I highly recommend that. Again, I'll have that info on the website. So we were a little bit annoyed. Then, of course, Rochelle, they say it was super expensive. But we decided that we're here. We should stop and have at least have one coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I had hot chocolate. Well, to this day, it's probably the most expensive hot chocolate I've ever had in my life. It's probably about $6 back then. That's, more like 15 now. Um, and then we went to the Opera House, Paris Opera House, which was, I guess it's most renowned for the inspiration of the Phantom of the Opera. And as you'll realize, Casey and I always tended to, for some reason, show up like 20 minutes or half an hour before they closed, or sometimes after they closed, which the Opera House was still open, obviously, because they have, operas most nights. But they did do free walking tours, but of course we missed that. So we ended up just, having to mosey around in there on our own. But of course, it's very elegant, and you walk in and there's, the red carpet and chandeliers, and yeah, it's very beautiful, as you can imagine. Excuse me. And then from there, we decided we were going to go to the Victor Hugo house, or La Maison de Victor Hugo, because Casey's dad is a huge Victor Hugo fan. And he wrote Les Miserables, and so he's a very famous French poet and novelist. So went there, and surprisingly, like, again, remember, no Google Maps or internet. You can just, TripAdvisor. So and no guidebook. So it's very surprising how well we did finding all this stuff. I don't even know how we did it, to be honest. I can't remember if we just asked people, which I highly recommend doing. I do that now. If I'm lost, I'll just ask locals. They know. And luckily, I do speak some French, so that was handy. So we went to Victor Hugo's house, and just took a walk around his house, and they've kept it how it was when he lived there. So that was pretty interesting. And then that was the day, really. It was a very long day, but a friend of mine used to live in France, so she had given me a couple names of like Parisian bars that she used to go to. And we found one, and it was, a bit of a dive, but it's fine by me because dive bars are my favorite bars, to be honest. So we went up there, and I think we grabbed a crepe along the way. So we had eaten something that wasn't baguettes and cheese. We met a couple of local guys in there, and we were playing pool. Well, oh my God, I got so drunk. Well, we both got very hammered. And I think I drank like 3 bottles of red wine myself. Luckily, the place wasn't too far from where we were staying, so we stumbled home. The next morning, I woke up, and yeah, not great. Luckily, I was only 23 at the time, so hangover wasn't too bad. But I guess when I got home, I decided I was going to write in my journal. Well, that is not how I normally write, and I couldn't even decipher that myself. I was like, yeah, we're not. Luckily, I can remember what we did the day before, because that would not have helped me at all. So day 3, we went to the train station and bought our train tickets to go down to Nice on the south coast of France. This is a great little idea, is that even nowadays, train stations are a great place, especially in Europe, to leave your backpack, because they all have left luggages, and I think nowadays it's about only €6 for the day. So that's going to save you on a night's accommodation. So that's a good little tip. So on the 3rd day, we decided we were going to go to see the Notre Cathedral, which I'm so fortunate and thankful that we got to see it before it was burnt down a couple of years ago, which was very, very sad, because it was built in 1163. So it's pretty old, 900 years, almost 900 years. And it was amazing. They have all the gargoyles on the outside, and it was just so Gothic. Like, it was incredible. And we got to go inside, and it was very, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I guess more spiritual, but I respect and appreciate religion, and especially beautiful, churches and mosques and temples that I've been to throughout the years. So I appreciate it completely. But yeah, and I think I even lit a candle for my lost loved ones, and it was very, very, very moving, very touching. Yes, so we spent a while there, and then we had a few hours to kill before our train. So we thought we would go to Pere Lachaisse, which is in the 20th arrondissement of Paris. And it's like one of the biggest cemeteries in the world. There's over 1 million people buried there, plus a lot more that are cremated there. And it was, I'm trying to think, I can't remember when it was, when it was kind of started, when it was built. Not really built, but you know what I mean. It was quite a while ago. And there's really famous people there, like Oscar Wilde, Edith, that are buried there. Oscar Wilde, Edith Piaf, Chopin. But our main thing was to see Jim Morrison's grave, because Casey was a huge Doors fan. I mean, I like the Doors, but he was a huge fan. And, there's also like 3 million people visit Pere Lachaisse every year. So, like I said, it's absolutely huge. I think it's something like, I forget how many square miles it is, but it's massive. So, of course, we get there at about probably 5:45 p.m. and it closes at 6 p.m. So there was a guy that was there, that worked there, and, I spoke to him in French, and I was like, well, can we just go in very quickly to Jim Morrison's grave? And he was, I was going to say typically French, but he was like, whatever. So I was like, well, whereabouts is it? Do you have a map or anything? And he just pointed. I was like, okay, great, thank you. So go in, and yeah, huge. And of course now it's dark. It's like, almost 6 p.m. It's January night in Paris. I said to Casey, I'm like, we're never going to find it. But we might as well head in the direction he pointed. And it's dark, and there's massive crypts, and there's, huge angel statues and gargoyles and all sorts, and, trees in there too. And of course it's nighttime, like I said, it's dark. So it was actually it was a little bit scary, I have to say. So we head off in that direction, and I can see, all of a sudden I see this very faint light in the distance, and I can start hearing music, very faint, which is not helping the scare factor too much. But anyways, we keep heading that way, and now I can hear, I'm like, it's bloody Jim Morrison singing to us. It's the Doors. Casey and I were like just looking at each other going, what the fuck is happening? And the light, of course, the closer we get, the light is getting brighter. So we just keep going, and we kind of come around this corner, like where, the light's the brightest and the music's the loudest. And first of all, before you kind of get to his little enclave, I guess, you just start seeing the graffiti all over gravestones from Doors fans, I guess, and Jim's fans. So coming around this corner, and there's this dude there, like, shooting up heroin, sitting on Jim's grave. And he had lit candles around him, and he had brought, back in 93, he brought his tape recorder, and he was playing the Doors. So Jim led us the way to his grave via this dude. Well, I mean, it was just surreal. It was like, oh my God. But I think it's also the best way to have seen Jim's grave, to be honest. So we were chatting to him for a little bit, and there's flowers everywhere. And we took our photo, each of us, at the grave. And next thing we're like, okay, Case, it's I don't even know what time it was at that point. After 7, probably, or yeah, 7-ish. So we now know it's closed for sure. And plus we have a train leaving. I think it left at around 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. And it was like on the other side of Paris where we were. So we had to get going, basically. Of course, now we have to find our way back to the entrance we came in without the help of Jim and the candlelight. Yeah, very scary again, going back, blah, blah. But we've somehow stumbled up upon the gate entrance we came in, but it's locked. Okay, so we've just been busted, jumping the metro, and now we're locked in Pere Lachaisse for the night. And then we have a train leaving in a couple hours. This is not good. And the gates were really high. They're probably about, I don't know, 8 to 10 feet high, like the fence all around. But there was a massive tree with a branch overhanging, like goes over the gate. So I was like, right, well, I guess we're going to have to climb this tree, scale this branch, and try and drop down 8 feet without breaking our bones, especially ankles. So we're just about to do that, and I just decided to have one more little look around on the other side of the gate entrance. And so I did that, and there was a little side door that had been locked, but you could push it too, like enough for us to squeeze through. So I called Casey. I'm like, dude, we don't have to do the tree thing. We can squeeze through here. So we did that. Very relieved. We didn't have to spend the night a January night. It was pretty cold in a graveyard cemetery. So I was back on the metro, which we paid for. Went to grab some food for the train journey because it was about 11 hour. I think at the time it was about 10 or 11 hours to get down to Nice. It's another tip on having to save money. Just go to little markets and shops and get your food that way. Anyways, get on the train. We'll pick up our bags, get out of the train. And of course we bought the cheapest tickets. So even then it was like $70 back then for the cheapest tickets. But they were just like seats that didn't even reclined. So that kind of sucked. Of course, no sleep and freezing, no heat. So super cold, super uncomfortable for 10 or 11 hours. Anyways, we get down to Nice the next morning. That's where my friend had lived. So she had given me the address of, she used to be a nanny. So she gave me the address of the family that lived there and a couple, bars and restaurants to check out. And Nice is really sweet. It's a really lovely seaside town. After this trip, I ended up moving to England, and I lived in Brighton, England, for 20 years. And Nice and Brighton really remind me of each other in some respects, especially the beach. The beach is like Pebble Beach. So if you wanted a beach holiday, I don't think Nice is your top pick, or Brighton for that. But Brighton's really cool. It has a very big nightlife. Nice is a little bit more chilled out. But we found somewhere cheap to stay, and we went to say hi to my friend Jen's family, and they were very friendly. We chatted to them for a little bit. And then, we just kind of spent 2 days in Nice and just relaxing, really, because there's not a lot of sights to see per se. But we missed our check. We also went to the train station again and went and bought our tickets to Rome. But we had, I guess, slept in January, so there wasn't a lot of other tourists there at all. And where we were staying, I don't know if we just didn't know when checkout was or something, so we either overslept or overstayed by an hour. Well, the owner was a bit of a douche, and he was he wanted us to pay for a whole night's accommodation for an hour, and I was just like, that's ridiculous. Like, there's no one even else here. Like, there's no one waiting to come in. So Casey said, listen, you stay with the bags and I'll go speak to him. And then Casey offered to be basically his maid for an hour to pay for our extra hour. But then he just kept yelling at me, saying that I was a really lazy woman and that Casey was awesome. But it was Casey's idea to do this. So I was just like, whatever, ignored him. But yeah, then on our way to Rome, we stopped in Monte Carlo for a couple hours. Now, talk about, the rich people's playground. I mean, wow, there's just huge casinos everywhere, and the harbor is just filled with super huge yachts. And we did walk into one or two casinos, but did not necessarily feel very comfortable there, as we're like two scroungy like backpackers on budgets and surrounded by, furs and diamonds. But it was really cool. I'm glad we stopped there for a couple hours. So to hear about Rome and our escapades there, you're going to have to tune in till next Thursday's episode to find out what happened in Rome. If we got ourselves into any more trouble. I think we were okay in Rome. So that's about it. So my thoughts on Paris had changed. I remember when the first day there, I remember writing in my journal, Paris, it reminds me of Montreal, French and expensive. But after those 3 days, it changed a lot. I really, really love the city. I think it's got an amazing vibe. We'd heard kind of horror stories about how snobbish Parisians are, especially that they don't really like Quebec, like French Canadian, at least their accents kind of thing. But luckily I spoke more with the French accent, how I was taught. So at least I had that. But even if you didn't know French, you'd be all right to go there. Lots of people speak English. Okay, so let's just do my Tam's top tips, which are a bit more updated for 2020. So I'd say tip number 1 would be to go to Paris in the off season. You don't have to necessarily go in January, but off season, even if it's a shoulder season, so say spring and autumn, because it's going to be a lot cheaper for flights and accommodation, as well as less people. And trust me, in Europe, you don't want to go in the busy season. There's just, especially, very popular touristy places like Paris. That would be tip number 1. Go in the off season. Tip number 2 would be you can now get passes. So if you are going to do like what we did, and 3 days is plenty in Paris. We saw a lot. We were hustling, but 3 days is plenty. Like I said, now it's almost $200 per person, the average spend. But you can get passes now that if you're going to to see the sites like we did, that are covered. But the best thing is you jump the queue. So that would be cool. I'll again have info on the website. And I'll put the link below the video. Depending on when you're watching this, it might that blog post might not be up yet, but give me some time. It will be. And tip number 3 would be, use train station for left luggage. And if you're, again, back then we couldn't book. Nowadays you can book your trains online and ahead and stuff like that. But even if you don't do that, if you like to travel more like how I travel is more kind of winging it. But it kind of is nice because you're not as, set in stone when you have to leave somewhere. Nowadays I do travel a little bit more. Depending on how much time I have, I will book things ahead of time. But I do prefer back then when it was just you kind of wing it. So regardless, if you don't book your trains in advance, my point is you just go in the morning. You will most likely get on the train, and then you can just leave your luggage there because you don't want to be traipsing around town all day with your big backpack. And for female solo travelers, I felt really safe in Paris, to be honest. Yes, I was with Casey, but if I was on my own, it'd be the same. And, there, like any big city, there's dodgy neighborhoods, which you just stay clear from, steer clear of. Don't travel, like when I see tourists or travelers doing this, like, with a camera around their neck, or like super obviously for like a tourist. Just try and always dress and look as much like a local as you can. Just have your day bag, cameras inside that bag. You'll be fine. And then at nighttime, if you do feel a bit nervous, then yeah, just get a taxi or Uber. But the metro, again, that's another tip, is just use the metro because it's so much cheaper. Like, so you can get day or 3-day or week passes, which makes it even cheaper. And also another budget tip is, like I said before, yeah, just live off cheese and baguettes and red wine when you're in Paris. It's going to be a lot cheaper. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap for this episode. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And yeah, we'll catch you next Thursday when we spend 2 days in Rome. Okay, until next time, safe travels, one road at a time.